All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's NBA pre-lock show. Final game before we have the All-Star break. So, nice 3-gamer to kind of wrap things up after yesterday's massive slate. Yesterday was an okay slate. It was basically a break-even slate. I lost a couple of dollars. But, I think we'll be able to finish strong here. I like this slate a bit. Some fun ways of getting different. Good to see y'all in the chat. Some of y'all were here earlier. Sorry. I had some internet issues and no one else could fill in, so had to run late. But thankfully, they got it fixed. Slate doesn't lock until 7:30, so we have a ton of time. First things first, we'll look at this first game. We have the Milwaukee Bucks going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Widest spread on the slate makes you a little nervous about some of those OKC guys. And then we have the Bucks who have injury news that make these guys fantastic. Dixon, you were right, man. Cam Thomas came through off the bench. Their coach was comparing him to guys like Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams, like guys who were legends coming off the bench. So he'll probably continue to do that, but he's a leverage play for me. I won't lead the witness there. Good to see you, OG. Yeah, Blake Wesley, we'll get there. Jason said, Josiah, I'm only looking for one thing tonight, value. Value play under 4K. All right, we'll look at it. For the Bucks side of things, the injury news is what made these guys more interesting. We usually don't like playing guys against OKC. They're an elite defense, but they have plenty of guys out, and Ryan Rollins is out for Milwaukee. He's their star 1 point guard, which means Kevin Porter Jr. should see massive minutes, and his usage rate goes up a ton. He's not the chalk of the slate, though, and he's not that pricey. I played KPJ even when Ryan Rollins was in the mix. He came through for us last night. My only concern with him is that he did play 38 minutes. I had him locked, and I still like having a lot of exposure to Kevin Porter Jr. It's just a very valid concern that he played a lot of minutes literally last night. So I'll have a 40% min on KPJ. He shows up a lot actually by himself. He was showing up in about like 90% of lineups. So I don't even have to do anything. I'll just take the lock off and he'll show up still in probably like 80, 90% of lineups. But he is someone I like. It's just we don't know just how many minutes he'll run or see after playing so much last night. Next up, guys like Bobby Portis, I'm not looking at on this slate. Hasn't been playing enough minutes and just hasn't been performing well. Kyle Kuzma was questionable. He is playing, though. We got that news officially. Don't like this matchup for him, but, he's shown some signs in ceiling. It's just not something we see very often, and especially in a tough matchup. Miles Turner, don't love him. AJ Green, don't love him. Cam freaking Thomas. We know how good he can be when he has opportunities, and there's no one really on this Milwaukee team that has a lot of talent, and so it really shouldn't have surprised us that he went out there and was lights out the way he was. He had the opportunity to take whatever shots he wanted. It was just, I was a little nervous that first game. You never know how things are going to go, but Dixon, you're on it, man. I am now on board, which, maybe that means it falls apart, but I still like this as a play. 4,600 for a guy who should see 20 plus minutes. With Ryan Rollins out, I think that should solidify this 25-minute range, where it wouldn't shock me if he sees a little bit more here too. So he's a leverage play for me tonight. I have a 30% min on him and one of those 4K value guys I like. And then that's pretty much it for me when it comes to Milwaukee. I'm not in love with Jericho Sims. He should see plenty of minutes. He is a very low points per minute guy, around like 0.66 is what we have him at. He just doesn't do a lot while he's out there. On a 3-game slate, can you have worse plays? Yes. He's someone I would like a bit more if he was like 3,500, but at 4,200, it feels like we're paying a bit of a premium for him. Dieng is a similar play, but he has a bit more usage. He does a bit more when he's out there. You can even see the slight increase in points per minute. These are just two viable value options, but they're not guys I'm prioritizing. Let's see if they show up by themselves. Cam Thomas is showing up right at that 30% min, and neither one of Dieng or Sims is showing up for me at all, which I'll live with. They're not guys I care too much about here. For the OKC side of things, they have a lot of guys out. SGA is still out, which means Cason Wallace will start, and then usage rate boost to the starters here. Jalen Williams, without the Y, is out. And so we will see Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe still see a ton of minutes. Isaiah Hartenstein isn't playing. And so that means we will see even more Chet or Jay Will a lot. The issue of Chet is that this game is not supposed to be close. And he can definitely do enough damage. I don't know. Chet's a weird piece for me. He just hasn't shown us a ton of ceiling in a while, even with SGA out and Jalen Williams out. We just haven't really seen him score 40 plus points like we need him to outside of really soft matchups. And Milwaukee, as a whole, defensively, they're not great, but the issue with the Bucks defense is that Miles Turner is a pretty solid defender in the paint. And so the 1-for-1 matchup isn't my favorite, but let me look a little bit closer, like the DVP, see if I'm missing something. Okay, see. Loading. Yeah, it's just tough going up against Turner in the paint. So I like Chet's ownership. I just didn't land there. Cason Wallace is a low points per minute guy. Doesn't do a ton when he's out there. Can he get hot? Yes, but not someone I'm trying to prioritize at 6K. Below that's when things get a bit more interesting for me. Y'all know I don't love playing the Thunder guys, but in a soft matchup at their price tag, they're not guys I don't want to have no exposure to. We know how hot these randoms on this team can get. So Aaron Wiggins feels gross, but his price tag makes a lot work. So I have a 40% min on him to kind of make sure he at least shows up around field weight exposure. Isaiah Joe is the bane of my existence, but on 3 gamers, like I mentioned yesterday, I think he's someone I'm willing to get some exposure to. So just a 10% min there. I'm not trying to get close to field weight or be over the field. Just want to have some lineups live if he happens to go off, but I'm not overly optimistic that that will happen to him. So that's why I only have a 10% min. Jalen Williams with a Y, I do like on this slate. He should show up for you by himself, but I put a 50% min on him or a 60% min on him just to kind of make sure I stay over the field so I don't have to worry about him too much as I continue to make changes. And then Kenrich Williams is projecting well. He shows up in about 8% of my lineup, so right there close to field weight exposure, which I'm very comfortable with. It's nice to just have some like value options here. With the Thunder, you never feel great just because they play everyone a lot, but guys like Kenrich Williams, Jared McCain can definitely get hot, especially if this game blows out. And or just the fact that it's a relatively soft matchup for Jarrett McCain, he can definitely get hot. So, like, if you're like gun to head, Kenrich Williams or Jarrett McCain, I would lean closer to Jarrett McCain because Bucks are worse against guards. I'll put a 5% min on McCain just to have some exposure there. And I think he could see more minutes. So there's just a little bit of upside there. But the risk is they don't have to use him a lot because they still have a ton of other guys if this game does stay relatively close. And or like Jarrett McCain isn't just like hot off the bench. So there's a few ways that could play out. And then Kenrich Williams is pretty low priority for me on this slate. So I'm not even going to put a 10% min on him. But like I said, he's showing up in about 8% of lineups, which is ideal. And that's pretty much it for them. Let's see. What are y'all saying? Let's see. Pre-All-Star game vibes and blowout run. Yeah, agreed. Right before the All-Star game, things get weird and the blowouts are almost a guarantee. Takedown Thursday. I like that, Larry. That's a nice little ring to it. Yeah, like I never love playing Chet unless it's just like a really soft matchup. But with Hartenstein out, Steen, he definitely has a higher chance of doing well. I don't hate Chet as like a relatively low owned play on a 3-gamer with upside. I just don't like the matchup enough to force exposure to it. I like these last 2 games way more. Let's see. Only thing Turner's decent at is finessing teams out of millions of dollars. Hey, I'll give him that. I'll give him that. Timid Turner. I used to love that song. I don't know what was wrong with me. All right. Next up, we have the Portland Trailblazers going up against the Jazz. Y'all know I love seeing the Jazz on a slate because it's a team we can always target. Whether they're healthy or everyone's hurt, nothing changes because we can still force exposure to them. Portland's a bit tougher just because we don't have the news yet. Let me see if I'm missing it. For Portland, I still have Deni Avdija listed as questionable. Would love it if we've gotten that news, but we haven't. So we're just waiting for it. If Deni Avdija gets ruled out, this slate is very different, just in the sense of Deni Avdija is really the only 9K player we have on the slate. If he misses this game, Kasoko is someone who could potentially start, or Gretschy could also start here in the 4K range. I don't even think we have Sissoko in the DS yet because he's pretty irrelevant unless Avdija gets ruled out. So potential late swapping situation there. We don't know what we don't know. Robert Williams is questionable. If he's ruled out along with Avdija, then Sissoko becomes a much realer play for me. And Klingen's minutes just become more solidified if Robert Williams gets ruled out too. The way I'm looking at this situation is that this is a fantastic matchup for Klingen. I hope this spread is relatively right, just so this game stays close. I'm a little hesitant to increase my exposure more to Klingen because there's a big in the last game on the slate that I like enough to lock him. And so that already limits my lineup some. Well, let me see. What can I do with Portland? Yeah, I'm just going to keep the 30% cap on Klingen. I do love the matchup, but I can't go too crazy here. Jeremy Grant is fine. 6,600 guy. I haven't gotten him too much this season. I like him more if Avdija gets ruled out. He's showing up in about 1% of lineups. Let me see. How has he been doing lately? Ugh, God. This guy has been playing like 29, 30 minutes, scoring like 18 points in some of these tougher matchups, 18 fantasy points. We did see on the 7th when he went up against Memphis, he played 32 minutes and had 41 fantasy points, but that's pretty much his ceiling. And it really is something that we haven't seen in a while. With Jeremy, let me see, because he's not showing up by himself, but I think he will see decent ownership here. And I always say we don't know necessarily who will go off against the Jazz, but it's almost a guarantee someone will. And Grant is on the court enough, he's involved enough where he definitely has that possibility. So I'll put a 15% min on him. I just don't want to be without some of these high upside potential guys. And so I'll just match the field there. But if Avdija is ruled out, I'll be significantly over the field there. Next up, we have Drew Holiday, a play that's worked out for us already this week. Hopefully, us going back to it will continue to work. What we like about Drew Holiday is, once again, the matchup. He has a high usage rate. He's scoring. He's getting assists while he's out there, a couple of rebounds. So he's a guy that I don't mind having exposure to on this slate. I have a 35% min on him. I want to be over the field when possible. And then everybody's wondering about Blake Wesley. What are we going to do with Blake Wesley? The DS loves him. Just absolutely in love. He's showing up in Well, for me, he's only showing up in 11% of lineups. He was showing up more. So maybe we did something with his projection to make him fall a little bit. But 8% is right. He's a risky, cheap play who, if he does see 20 plus minutes, will be in a very viable spot for us on this slate. But how likely is it that he really sees those minutes is the concern. The Trailblazers are another team where they're just young and they play a ton of guys. And so Wesley isn't someone I would want more than 20% of. I would cap him if I was getting more than that. And what I mean by cap is putting in an exposure maximum number here. So I would do like 20 if I needed to, but I don't. So I won't limit the DS with that. But as of right now, he's only showing up in 11% of lineups, and that's fine. He's an okay lineup filler at 3,100. He's going to be low owned. He's not going to get a lot of ownership, so not my favorite single entry play by any means, but if you only have 3,100 left because you spin up everywhere else, you can do worse. So that's the Trailblazers. Again, a hard team to really look at too closely because we still don't have the Denny Avdia news. This entire team becomes significantly more interesting if he gets ruled out. And part of the reason why I like forcing exposure to these later games a little bit more than that first one is because I'm able to late swap with that news and I have a ton of flexibility in my lineups. All right. Other side of this game, Trailblazers played a slow pace. Not a team I usually like to pick on, but on a 3-gamer, and game has a high total because the Jazz aren't good, I'm willing to force exposure primarily because they're still missing guys. They're tanking like all hell, and they're forcing these guys who were a bit underpriced on DK just because they didn't have this news yet. So Keontae George is out. He's been out for a while. That just solidifies Collier's minutes like he's been doing this whole week, really since the trade deadline. Lauri Markkanen is out. That was a little unexpected. He's been limited for a while, so it doesn't change as much as it has in the past when he's been ruled out. But it's still impactful. That's still 20 plus minutes going to guys like Filipowski, Bailey, Sensabaugh. Again, this team still plays a lot of guys. Contra. So there's not like one guy who benefits the most, but it gives everyone a slightly higher minutes base, and the usage rate spreads pretty evenly to all of the starters. So this is a team that becomes more interesting to me because of that. And then we found out Jaren Jackson's getting surgery today, season-ending surgery. He had no real issues this entire season. They're tanking, and he doesn't want to play anymore. So that's what's happening there. But it makes this team even more viable because there's more minutes to go around. The guys that I'm prioritizing are Isaiah Collier. I like being over the field on him. The matchup's not my favorite, but his minutes floor is almost uncomparable. On this slate, it's a little bit closer because there's a decent amount of guys out, but he's been consistent. Is one we don't have to question too much. Could get burned if they decide to get weird right before the All-Star break, but it's a risk I'm willing to take with him not being super chalk when he's been really good. There is competition. There's guys like KPJ, Austin Reeves, but I can have a 40% min on him and still have a ton of exposure to both of those guys. So it's not always just black or white there. Filipowski's in a really good spot. Nurkic is weird just because he rarely ever plays. He's typically a DNP. So I can't do that. If that gets me, then so be it. But Filipowski's benefits a lot with Lauri Markkanen out. And if Nurkic is a DNP, this is a fantastic spot for Filipowski. So I have a 30% min on him. And the matchup's not terrible going up against Portland. So he's someone I just want to prioritize on this slate. And then Filipowski is showing up right at around 31% of lineups. So one of the plays I like a good amount on this slate. Y'all know my history with Ace Bailey. We started off rough because I just refused to play him. Here recently, I've taken a few more shots we've hit, but I haven't just matched field weight exposure on him in a while. With Lauri Markkanen now, I'm intrigued enough. His minutes floor has been a little bit more consistent. So we're just going to do a 25% min. There's some potential for upside here. especially if this game can stay close. I'm willing to take the shot on Ace. Is it safe? No, but he's cheap enough, should play enough where it's worth a shot. The fact that his usage rate and his points per minute are as low as they are is actually insane, though. So hopefully he improves upon that today. Bryce Sensabaugh is someone I almost always like when the Jazz are missing guys. He's just someone that it seems like most of the field is usually a little low on, and he has a ton of upside. Like, he can ball. And so he's someone I have a 30% exposure minimum on. He's someone I like being over the field on. And he's not pricey too. He's only 5,500. So he's a guy I want to make sure is showing up in lineups. And then we have guys like Cody Williams and Vince Williams. I like Vince Williams, especially with Keontae George out. It stabilizes his minutes, and he has enough oomph to have upside. Like, we've seen him have some explosive games this season, so not going crazy with Vince, but I like a 25% minimum on him, having some leverage over the field. One of those 4K guys that have a high enough usage rate where even if he doesn't see a ton of minutes, can still be a really good play for us on a 3-game slate. So I like having a lot of exposure to him there. And then Cody Williams makes me nervous as all hell. He plays a lot of minutes, but he's another one of those low usage rate guys, similar to the Bucks? Yeah, kind of like he's very similar to like a Jericho Sims. He's similar to a Kenrich Williams. Like, those 3 guys are almost interchangeable in your lineups. I have a 5% min on Cody Williams just so he's showing up some. He's out there enough where he can just land in the nuts by getting a couple of rebounds here and there, but he's not aggressive enough on the offensive side of things where he feels like someone I need to have a ton of leverage on. So just another value play, but he's a low usage guy, so I like it a little bit less. Okay, the game of the night, just because it's the closest spread and there's at least some talent here in this game. 237 total and a half and a 6.5 point spread. For Dallas, we have Cooper Flag out, which means we should continue to see a ton of Najee Marshall. He'll start. And then all of the starters see a usage increase. In particular, guys like Max Christie and Najee stand out the most for me. Caleb Williams is doubtful, so that stabilizes things for Marshall. Middleton will see an increase in minutes too, which is scary. Y'all know he's been on my shit list for a while, but I wanted to take a shot here with these Dallas Mavericks. Dang, Bailey's 42% owned on FanDuel. That's wild. Wesley's popping because he's just a cheap play. If he's showing up for you more than 20%, I don't love it. CW said pick one, Reeves, KPJ, or Collier. Reeves. Any love for Nurkic? If he starts, he's fine. I'm just tired of playing the game, so I won't do it. What bigs do we like tonight? Double potential, Klingon, Filipowski. Yeah, those were my main 2. And then there's one more, Marvin Bagley, who I like a decent amount here on this slate. I have him locked currently, but y'all might talk me out of it. Yeah. I have a 10% min on Chris Middleton just because with Martin out, I think it does increase his likelihood of having one of those hotter games, stabilizes his minutes some. So I'm on the bandwagon here again. For a 20 max, what would your min be for Cody Williams? I think I'm landing on I wouldn't have a min on Cody Williams if I was 20 maxing. I'm just thinking about it a little bit longer to make sure. But yeah, I just wouldn't do it. Unless I wouldn't force anything. If he showed up naturally, it would be fine, but 20 max, I wouldn't force a play like him. Okay. So yeah, Chris Middleton is someone I have a min on. Najee Marshall with uh, Cooper Flag out, like I said, stabilizes things a bit there for him. He shows up naturally in about 46% of my lineups. Probably the scariest thing I'm doing here is I have a lock on Marvin Bagley. Let me look at him on the sim model. See if the sim likes him. Yeah, sim likes him a good bit. Sim also, no. He likes Jalen a lot and Kendrick Williams, so might be missing something there. But it does like Marvin Bagley, and I like Marvin Bagley. I haven't been afraid of Ayton as a defender, but with Ayton out, Jackson Hayes is far from someone I'm trying to avoid. And we know the upside Marvin Bagley can have. He does have a history of not doing great in foul trouble. And if he was higher owned, I would be kind of concerned about a chalky Marvin Bagley, but he's not seeing a ton of ownership. So at 19%, 4,500, should see 20 plus minutes, a matchup I think he can bully the hell out of. He's someone I want to prioritize. I have him locked. That could make my night, ruin my night by the time we get there, but it's a risk I'm willing to take when I don't love too many value plays. So I locked him. And then Max Christie was showing up by himself. He's someone I do want to see in lineups. He's only showing up in 3% now. So I will increase that. Because Christie's one of those guards. Well, first, they don't have a ton of guards. But he's someone that's good enough and sees enough minutes where he can just fall into a nuts lineup if he just gets hot during one of his runs when he's out there on the court. Not a consistent guy, low points per minute guy, but those minutes are hard to come by at 5K on this slate. And then PJ Washington is someone who does benefit with all the injuries they have, but I don't like him enough for this price range. Like if we look at some of these 5, 6K guys, PJ Washington projects better than a lot of them, but I like Drew Holiday more. I like Najee Marshall more. Even Ace Bailey, I trust his minutes a little bit more here, so I like having exposure there. I like Bros Sensabaugh more. Aaron Wiggins, Max Christie, the list goes on. So I like this range a lot, and PJ Washington just wasn't one of those guys I wanted to prioritize in that range. I do still have a 10% min on him. He does still show up in 25% of my lineup, so I guess there's that. But it wasn't one I felt overly strong or passionate about. Max Christie, we have that 15% min on. Chris Middleton, I have a 10% min on. I would have a 10% min on Chris Middleton, even if I was 20 maxing. I like him enough for that, but I wouldn't go much higher than 10%. Brandon Williams, it looks like he is getting a lot of ownership, and he's not showing up really at all for me. This is one where I'll look at the sim model, look at 4,800, Brandon Williams. He stands out a bit, but I mean, sim likes Cam Thomas, Marvin Bagley significantly more. He likes Max Christie a lot more than Brandon Williams. Let me look at how he's been doing here recently a little bit closer. Yeah, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that shit. He hasn't seen, I mean, he is only 4,800, so we're not paying a premium for him. But last game against Phoenix, he only played 17 minutes. Game before that, he played 23 against the Spurs. They are without Cooper Flag, and they like to use Cooper Flag to play the point some. So maybe they do try to use Brandon Williams a bit more here with that. But he only played 8 minutes against Houston. These minutes are terrifying for some of these really chalky guys. I don't love Brandon Williams, but it's a 3-gamer, and I shouldn't have trouble just getting exposure to him. So I'll do like a 20% min and see if that works for me. And then I have... I'll see what happens if I take the lock off of Bagley and try a 30% min. It should still work the way I want it to, but sometimes you have to double check it. All right. Other side of this game, we have the Lakers. Then we'll make sure exposures are showing up the way I want them to. Let's see. 90% James. We'll talk about James here in a second. Cam Thomas, risky with Dort Caruso duo taking turns on him. It's a good defensive team. With a guy like Cam Thomas, it's definitely risky because the matchup is so good, or the matchup is so tough going up against a good defense. But shooters, I worry about those direct matchups a little bit less, and he's not super expensive. Like we see it with guys like Cam Thomas, MPJ, Keontae George, guys like that who are just going to shoot the ball no matter what, can overcome tough matchups. If Cam Thomas was the chalk of the slate, and if he became that for some reason, then I think he's definitely fadeable. But he's only 18% owned, and so me having 30% is just upside to a guy who has a ton. It's just me having leverage on a guy who has a lot of upside instead of me taking a shot on a risky player who's in a tough matchup, if that makes sense. It's just not that big of a risk because of the low ownership. But if he was super chalk, then yeah, that's one where it's like, okay, maybe this could be a safe fade spot. Yeah, I like Isaiah Joe a little bit too. I have a 5% min on him or a 10% min on him. I'm not going to be over the field, but I'll have some exposure. He's just one of those guys who on smaller slates can sometimes just do it. I've been burned by it enough to play it at least a little bit. McCain, I have a 5% min on McCain because I do think in a blowout, he definitely can see more run. And he's kind of like Cam Thomas, where we've seen him have flashes off the bench. So I'm more open to it than some of the other randoms. Are y'all serious? Turner's out. What are they doing on this slate? Already getting weird, but at least we have that news. Let's talk about the Lakers, and then we'll figure out what the hell's going on. For LA, Luka Doncic is out, and so that automatically makes all of the other starters viable. Smart will start with Luka out, but huge increase in usage is to LeBron James and Austin Reeves. The matchup against Dallas is similar to that of the Jazz. This is a team we like to attack and to beat up on. If this game stays competitive, there's no reason to not love LeBron James and Austin Reeves tonight. Two of the better, more pricier options, kind of the only pricier guys to play if Deni Avdija gets ruled out. I like LeBron, but I don't think I like him as much as everyone else. Golly, he has 80% ownership. 62. I think he'll fall somewhere between 60 to 80%. And I don't have a lot right now. I'll put a 50% min on him. I don't know if it will be necessary to have him on this slate, but me having him in 50% of lineups is a nice like half and half. It's like if he does smash, then at least I have half my lineups with a chance. But if he disappoints a bit, I have a little bit of leverage in a spot like that. And whenever there's like the most chalkiest stud on the slate, is rarely a spot I feel like I have to be over the field on. So 50% will be fine, but I'll be under field weight. And then I'm doing the opposite with Austin Reeves. I want to be over the field on him. He's the one that and he's cheaper. His minutes haven't been as consistent as LeBron's, but he has a higher points per minute rate, and we know what Austin Reeves can do without Luka. So Reeves is really the main guy I'm prioritizing. I have a 60% min on him, just making sure I'm over the field there. And then the rest of these guys will really just have to get hot from the three-point line or just be very, very involved for them to become relevant. Guys like Marcus Smart, such a low usage rate, relatively, they rarely do anything. Jake LaRavia, we've played that game already this week. Not super cheap at 4,900. There's not really much else to say about him. We've seen him have some ceiling performances, but not consistently enough. I want to just make sure I'm not missing anything else with him. Oh, yeah, and Ayton's out too, and that's why we're expecting guys like Jackson Hayes and Maxi Kleba to see more minutes. But yeah, Laravia, I'm just not getting to on this slate. Rui, I'm just not getting to on this slate. Same with Luke Kennard. If LeBron and Reeves were out, maybe I would consider going back, but not with them healthy. Hayes, I like playing bigs against Dallas. They're not a good defensive team in the paint. Hayes is not showing up a lot for me, though, which I don't love. I'll put a 10% min on him. We've seen this. We've been disappointed by Hayes plenty of times, even when he should see plenty of minutes. And so that's part of the risk. That's why I'm not trying to force myself to have a ton of exposure. But again, I like this game environment enough where I'm going to force him in. I'll put a 15% min on Hayes, and I would do that in a 20 max too. Kleba's getting old, man. I love Maxi Kleba, but I don't know how much they can really run him out there tonight. It wouldn't shock me if Rui plays the 5 some. Jared Vanderbilt might see some minutes there too. Is it enough to put a min on them? Nah. I think there's just some clearer spots. Lakers are still a little hazy since they still have LeBron and Reeves playing. And then let's see what we have and adjust from there. Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll have to talk about Turner with him out. Collier or Porter Jr. for single entry. That's a tough one. That is tough. I would say KPJ is the safer play and probably just the better play with no Ryan Rollins. Where Collier, he's in pretty much the same role he's been in for the last week. No one else is playing but him. So yeah, I would go KPJ. A little bit more upside and safer. Yeah, LeBron's ownership is just getting insane. And like when you look at the slate and you look at the pay up options, like I'm sorting by salary right now. Who else? Like no one has any other salary besides LeBron. Like everyone's scared about Denny. If Denny plays, I'll have exposure to him. But there's no one else to pay for. When that happens, usually you see more of these mid-range builds work out more than the star popping off. But he's going up against Dallas, who suck defensively, and so there's still a pretty good chance he can smash tonight. I'm betting on it being an Austin Reeves night over LeBron. That's kind of my way of getting different, but I still have him in half my lineups. And it's possible you don't need either one of them. Like if some of these cheaper guys pop off for 40, 50 points, you probably won't need a LeBron or Austin Reeves or Denny Avdia in that spot if they pop off at a cheaper price tag. So definitely a lot of ways you can get different there, but I still like having a little bit of exposure. Tijuana, yeah. You know what? That's so true. Like LeBron's like, oh, there's no other stars on the slate. This is my time to get all of the attention. That's a good call out. Wouldn't shock me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, you're right. Let's get focused. Let's look at these Bucks. So with Miles Turner out, you would think they're almost forced to play more Bobby Portis. Jericho Sims sees a nice boost, and Nance becomes a viable play now. Before I force anything, I'm just going to see if the DS gives me any of these guys naturally. But they're much better plays than they were earlier. The hard thing about this slate is just that all of these teams have kind of just given up besides the Lakers tonight. And so most lineups you kind of want LeBron and or Reeves with a mixture of these turds who should be in better spots because the real players are quitting tonight. Okay. So yeah, we have KPJ showing up a lot. Cam Thomas is still showing up a lot for us. And then that's basically it for Milwaukee. I do think projections will update this information, but for now, I will put like a 15% min on Jericho Sims, and then I'll put a 15. I think anywhere from like 10 to 15% on Pete Nance is fine, but the minutes on him are going to be riskier. And let me look at this right quick. Let me see who sees the highest increase in usage with Miles Turner off the court. Actually, I'll probably have to put in who sees the highest increase in usage with all the guys they have out, but it won't take too long. Oh, the OKC lineup changed? Of course it did. Let me see. What were they giving us? What are they giving us tonight? All right, the Thunder will start. We'll look at them. We'll start Wallace, which we expected, Isaiah Joe, and Lou Dort, which isn't surprising. Kenrich Williams is starting, which we had him projected for a lot of minutes already too. And Chet is starting. So Aaron Wiggins, not in the starting lineup. Much worse play. I'm going to take that 40% min off of Aaron Wiggins. Could still see some blowout run, but not going to force that exposure to him. Isaiah Joe should pop a bit more, but I'm still just going to keep the 10% min. I'm going to double check. Yeah. Yeah. Now that I don't have all that exposure forced on Aaron Wiggins, I do have a little bit more flexibility. So I'll do a 20% min on Isaiah Joe. I'll increase my exposure to... You know what? I don't have a lock anymore. And Jalen Williams now has a much softer matchup with Miles Turner out. And he's kind of like a similar play to the Bagley play that I liked a lot earlier. And I think this is just better with Jalen Williams. So I'm going to lock him. And then Chet now has a softer matchup too with Miles Turner out. And so didn't have exposure to Chet earlier. I will put a 20% min on him now. And Kenrich is a much more viable play starting. If I had to think, I think he'll probably pop by himself when I run this again. But if he doesn't, I will force exposure there too. Love when a starting lineup makes things a little bit clearer. Dang, I have to wrap up soon. 15. Okay, so he does not show up too much more by himself. Still in that 12 to 13% range, but I do want to make sure I'm over the field on Kenrich. So I'll just do 15%, so that way I'll be over. And then for Milwaukee, no Miles Turner. It does make me like KPJ still, so 70% there. Cam Thomas is fine, leverage play. Bobby Portis I'm a little intrigued with, but not enough to force him in. Same story for Kuzma. Yeah, not too much changes for me, besides just wanting some more Jericho Sims. I'll move Jericho to like 10% since I locked Jalen Williams. I don't need quite as much value. Pete Nance, same story. I'll do like 10%. They're better, but I do really just think Jalen Williams is better than all of them in that spot. And then Dieng, still not going to move the needle enough. I would like to see him show up a little bit by himself, but not enough. Okay, he's shown up in one lineup. I guess that'll be good enough. And so, yeah, that's pretty much this slate. Mutt like Sims as a core play. Oh, man, these slates get weird sometimes. Is Sims starting? Like, let me see. Yeah, he is starting. Oh, I missed that. So that officially came in. Sims and Dieng are both starting. Okay. I don't want to go too crazy, but I will do a 10% min on Dieng and increase Sims to 20 for Mutt. And ideally, it doesn't look like his ownership is moving much across the industry. So hopefully I'll be over the field a decent amount on these guys if they do well. And once again, like not enough. I don't have enough for them to ruin my slate either. Dixon, you're on it, man. On fire. All right, let's see. See what we get before we wrap up. No gummies in here, so I have to wait till after. I wish we had that Denny news already, but they'll wait until probably right at 7:30 knowing them. Jalen's showing up. I'm gonna lower this LeBron min to 30 because the more I think about it, the more I do like it's very high likelihood he could pop off tonight. But I do like just finding a way to get a little different on a slate. Yeah. If he has a legendary night, I'm just gonna have to call it a L. Drew Holiday, all of the men's are doing the thing they're supposed to, which is nice. Only guys I'm not getting as much exposure to now are guys like Chris Middleton and Pete Nance. Everything else is working as it should. And then Jarrett McCain's only showing up in one lineup or two lineups, and I didn't love him too much. Blake Wesley's only showing up in about 4% of lineups. So this is good. I like the way this looks. This is the way I'm going to run with it. And yeah, we're going to eat tonight. It's going to be a good one. We're going to wrap up this season on a high, and then we'll miss NBA while the All-Star break is going, but we'll get it together and come back strong for the last part of the season. The schedule is kind of ridiculous. I don't know if y'all looked at the schedule for the end of the year, but these slates get massive. And then there's like 2 or 3 gamers. It gets kind of strange, but good luck tonight, y'all. Peace out. See you next week, next Thursday. Good luck out there.